Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of College and Career Pathways, where every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 p.m. we provide you with information on various colleges and universities, financial aid resources, skilled trade professions, technical and training schools, career readiness skills, all designed to help you make the best career decisions possible. I'm Toni Cureton, your host, and today we are with the Michigan Department of Treasury, and they are going to give us a financial aid one-on-one workshop today. So Emily, thank you. We're so glad to have you. It's great to have you speak to us about the ins and outs of financial aid.
Well, thank you so much for having me back again. So excited to get the opportunity to share some information with you all about the financial aid process. There's a lot that goes into it, but really our goal today is just to provide you with some of that basic information, things to consider as you all are thinking about life after high school, what that college path maybe might look like. And I want to be able to share with you some of those different funding resources where you can find that free money. And then also, of course, we'll touch on some other things like student loans and, of course, the importance of FAFSA in all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we don't need to go through all this overview listing. We'll just dive right in. So I'm going to put up 3 different options on the screen, and these may be some of the different institutions or some of the different colleges and universities that you all might be considering right now. So things like community colleges that are in option 1, what you'll see across all of the options is that first bullet point, and that's cost of attendance, or you see that average COA. So this is what a lot of you are going to start noticing and seeing as you're looking at different colleges and universities and comparing that cost of attendance across those schools. So know that when we're looking at things like community colleges, in general, they're going to offer a lot of 2-year degree programs. So this is a lot of associate degrees, but also know that they're going to offer some certificate programs too. So you may see some options out there, some things you're interested in that may come in the form of a certificate or even things like licensing programs. So definitely look at your local community college because 1, you're going to save money. You can see that of those 3 options, that's the lowest in terms of that average COA. So you're going to save money there. These tend to be smaller class sizes. So a lot of times that could be more one-on-one time with your professor. And again, just a good starting point for you after high school, especially if maybe you don't know what you might want to study. This is a good option because you can take some different classes, not at the same price tag as option 2 or option 3. But when we roll into option 2, you'll notice some differences right away. So look at that average COA for option 2. It's gone up, right? But also they're offering a lot of different types of degrees. So things like those 4-year bachelor's degrees, and then anything after that. So looking at master's or graduate programs, those are also going to be offered at option 2 at those public colleges or universities. But also know that some of those public colleges and universities are also offering associate degree programs. So you may find yourself, able to be there and earn various degrees throughout your time at that one institution. And what I always say as we're looking at, especially the cost of attendance at these different institutions, is know that there are decisions that you can make to help reduce that cost of attendance. For instance, when I was at option 2, I had the fortunate luck that I was able to stay at home. So I commuted and I saved a lot of money on commuting to campus to take my classes. Now, not everyone everyone wants that, but that's one way. Also, not maybe needing the meal plan that's oftentimes offered to you when you are staying on campus. Some students won't go with the meal plan because they know that they can buy their own groceries and kind of budget it a little bit better. So just know that these are just a couple of choices, but you also might have scholarships, you might have grants, institutional aid that's available to you that helps reduce that average cost of attendance. And then the last option is, of course, our private colleges or universities. And you may notice what jumps out at you is maybe that average cost of attendance, that's the most expensive of these three options. They're offering many of the same programs as option 2 at the public colleges and universities. It's just a little bit more expensive, but keep in mind that at option 3, they may be able to offer you different scholarships and grants at that private college or university. Initially, I went to a private school in Ohio, and I was surprised when I got my award package at what they could do for me at that school, knowing that it was a little more pricey. So again, if you have a school in mind that maybe falls into that third category, don't hesitate to still apply, because you might be surprised at what they can do for you in terms of scholarships and grants. So where do you find that money? Where is it? So there's 4 sources of financial aid. The first is the federal government. So we'll talk a little bit later about some of the programs that are available through the federal government that you might be eligible for. Also the state government. So I'm here with the state of Michigan, and we give out different scholarships and grants to students here in the state that are eligible. So I'll talk a little bit later about some of our programs through the state that you may be eligible for right now. Then also the institutions themselves. So don't forget that the colleges or universities that you're looking to attend, they're going to have scholarships and grants available to students going to school there. And I know that there are institutions here in the state that have scholarships and grant programs that unfortunately some students just don't ever apply for. Maybe they're not aware of it. They don't know that they have a specific scholarship, maybe for psychology students or for freshman students. So, keep in mind that this is one source of financial aid, and you'll want to look at your college or university for those different scholarships and grants. And then lastly, our private or third-party scholarships. So think about like local foundations, organizations, maybe clubs, could even be your employer. They may offer some type of scholarship. Also think about if you're a member of a church, maybe your parents are a member of a union. There could be a number of scholarships out there in that private or third-party sector. So keep that in mind, and I'll also show you a tool a little bit later that will help you kind of search for some of those private or third-party scholarships that are available right in your community. So we talked through those different sources of financial aid. Now let's talk through the different types. So the first type is free money. So hopefully I got your attention with free money, because that should be where you all are looking to find money. So things like scholarships and grants. So the big difference here is that scholarships tend to be merit-based. So they're looking at maybe some type of accomplishment. Maybe it could be a certain GPA, or maybe a standardized test score, or maybe you were a captain on your local 4-H club, or a captain of some type of athletic team. Could be any number of things. Scholarships are really wide ranging. I once saw a scholarship, so not last fall, but the fall before, I saw a scholarship for loudest scream in a haunted house. So there's a lot of random scholarships out there. But for you all as students, you're going to have to do a little bit of research to find those scholarships. So, unfortunately, you don't have someone coming to you like, this would be great scholarship for you. You might have to do a little bit of that legwork, a little bit of that research to find some of that free money. But grants, the difference here, they're both free money, but the difference here is that grants tend to be need-based. And what we mean by that is we need to see that the student demonstrates financial need or that they have financial need. And how do we do this? Through the FAFSA. So you're going to start to hear me talking about the FAFSA a lot during the presentation, starting to kind of sprinkle that in there for those of you who maybe have started your FAFSA or those who haven't. I want you to know how important it is, why we do it, and hopefully, answer any questions that maybe you have about the FAFSA process. But it's through completing the FAFSA, and it's that information that you put in the FAFSA that helps determine whether or not you might have need for one of those grants out there. So you can see it's really important that you do the FAFSA, because otherwise you might miss out on certain grants that you're eligible for. Now, also earned money. This is another type of financial aid, and this is federal work study. So I don't know if any of you have heard of work study, but this is part-time employment on a college campus to help pay for college expenses. So think of it like a regular part-time job. You're going to get a regular paycheck, and basically the government says, we hope you'll use this money to go towards college expenses, but it's to your discretion. So I've seen students use the money they've earned at work study for books and supplies. I've seen them use it for groceries or just as extra spending money. But at all of the colleges and universities that you all are thinking about attending, they're going to have work study jobs on their campus. So you'll have a whole list of work study jobs that are available. And again, the nice thing here is it's a regular paycheck you're earning for part-time employment, but I've seen students work as little as 6 hours or 8 hours a week. So you're able to get some of that work experience while also doing, the work that it takes to be a full-time college student as well. So for earned money, for this type of financial aid, you have to complete your FAFSA again. So that's when FAFSA comes into play again, because in order to be considered for FAFSA or for earned money for federal work study, you have to have a FAFSA. So keep that in mind, students, and know that that'll be a question on your FAFSA. You'll see, do you want to be considered for federal work study? And I would just really recommend that you check that box because again, it's a form of earned money and just some extra money in your pocket. And then lastly, we have borrowed money. So of course I have to talk about loans, not the most exciting topic in the world, but it really is so important. And I really want to share with you just some of those basics about student loans. I want to talk to you about the different types. And then I'm also going to leave you with some kind of tips, things to consider if you do have to take out student loans. So keep in mind that some loans will have to be repaid with interest. So all loans have to be repaid, and there's also some loans out there that require you to repay them with interest. So they're a little more money than they were when you initially took them out. But again, we'll talk about those a little bit later. So I talked a little bit about the FAFSA on that last slide, and of course about the importance of it, but I want to show you when you all start this process, many of you are going to start out by creating what we call an FSA ID and password. So think of this as like your username and password, and this is really important because it really helps you throughout the FAFSA process to complete it quickly, get it signed electronically, and good to go. So this will be your first step. Students, you're going to create an FSA ID, and your parent is also going to create an FSA ID because they have have a big piece of the FAFSA that they complete as well. But this is a screenshot of the FAFSA.gov website. And so this will be after you create that FSA ID, then you'll be going in to start the process. And when you go in, you'll go through a series of questions. They're going to ask you a lot of things about, where you live, what high school you're at, what colleges you're considering attending. So there's going to be a number of questions for you to complete as the student. And they also are going to pull up things, or you'll have the ability to select by state to see any of our state financial aid deadlines. But of course, today I'm going to mention the two programs we have that have those financial aid or those FAFSA deadlines. So some things to think about when you're getting ready to do that FAFSA is know that it can be completed online. They also have the old school paper form too. If you prefer to do it that way, you can request a copy of that and complete it by hand. But many people complete it just online via their computer or laptop, and know that students we've seen, they're using the mobile app too. So they do have the new FAFSA mobile app. And I just caution students and families, just make sure that whether you're using the computer or your mobile phone, that you're on a safe and secure network, because you're going to put in things like your social security number, your date of birth. So want to make sure that you're not on a network or on a connection that other folks have access to. Also, pay attention to the website that you're on, making sure it's that FAFSA.gov, because there are some scam sites out there. They look very similar to the FAFSA screenshot I showed you earlier, but know that a red flag will be if you're being prompted to enter some type of payment. So know that FAFSA is always free. So FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you should never, and you will never pay to complete the FAFSA. Students, I hate to bust your bubble if you didn't know about this, but you will have to complete the FAFSA every year that you're enrolled in college. And the reason that is because things can change, right? So from year to year, circumstances might change, financial situations might change. So that's why you're going to complete that FAFSA every year that you're enrolled in college. Now, know that there are two state of Michigan programs that have a March 1st FAFSA deadline, and that's the Michigan Competitive Scholarship and the Michigan Tuition Grant. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. But of all of the state programs, those are the two that require the FAFSA to be completed by March 1st. So the FAFSA is available for seniors right now. It opened up October 1st. Don't worry, anyone who's participating today who's maybe wondering, am I way behind? No, you still have time to complete it. And I would just really recommend, I always tell students, if you could try to complete it, usually around the winter break time or sooner. I know that you'll be off. And of course, what better way to spend your time than completing the FAFSA? But it doesn't take that long. I've seen students and families complete it in an hour or two. So if you've got your information ready to go, it shouldn't be an issue getting that done. But just know the sooner you get it done, the more aid you might have available to you. So I've worked with a student in the past who she didn't complete her FAFSA till around May. And unfortunately, she had a lot less aid available to her when May rolled around, because so many other students had already taken advantage of some of those other financial aid programs that were out there. So it's just really important that you get that FAFSA in as soon as you can. And any juniors, class of 2023, know that FAFSA is going to open up October 1st of your senior year. So next October. So what happens once you've completed your FAFSA? So you're going to complete your FAFSA, you're going to put in your information, your parent might have a piece that they have to do, they're going to put in their information. And then once all of that is completed, it gets sent to the federal government where they process the FAFSA. And then what happens is you will receive a notification of your estimated family contribution, or EFC. Now, EFC is used to determine the types of financial aid that you're eligible for. So remember when I talked earlier about grants and how those are need-based and how they're going to use your FAFSA to determine if you might be eligible for a particular grant. This is the piece of the FAFSA that they're looking at. So they're looking at your EFC to determine what types of grants and other aid you might be eligible for. So keep in mind the EFC is not the amount that you and your family are expected to pay up front. And I know that sometimes you see that number and you're like, uh-oh, this is what I'm expected to pay out of pocket. Know that that's not the case. I just got an email a week or two ago from a student who said, Emily, I just completed my FAFSA and they told me my EFC is $14,000. I can't pay $14,000, what am I going to do? So I had to talk with them a little bit and just say, well, wait, what I want you to do is apply to those schools, apply to those colleges and universities that you're wanting to attend, and then wait to get their award letters. So what's going to happen for all of you is that once you complete that FAFSA, you start applying to different colleges and universities. And once those colleges make decisions, if you've been accepted, they're going to send you what's called an award letter. And within that award letter, it's going to list all of the scholarships and grants that you are eligible for. So that helps you to have a better idea of how much that particular college or university can do for you. So for instance, if I applied to Ferris State and maybe I applied to Eastern Michigan and Washtenaw Community College, maybe if I've been accepted to all three, I want to get award letters from each of those schools to compare and see who can do the most for me. How far is my financial aid going to go at each of these schools? So as I shared with that particular student, I said, wait, get those award letters and really see what those colleges and universities can do for you, what scholarships and grants you might be eligible for. So there are things that will impact EFC, and that's things like income. So they're going to be looking at the income of the parent, and also students, if you're working, they're going to also want to know what your income is. Also the family size. And if you have any brothers or sisters that might also be in college, they want to know about that. And things like amount paid in taxes. So a lot of that info is going to come through the FAFSA. Now, there is such a thing called an independent student, and I don't know if you all have started to hear these terms, either dependent students or independent students. So an independent student could be a student in one of the following circumstances or situations. So I'm going to put up a list of some of those reasons. So you can see it's everything from age, if you're 24 or older, to things like if maybe you have dependents, so maybe you have a child, if you've experienced time in foster care, if you're an emancipated minor, or if maybe you're homeless or at risk of being homeless. These are all things that would classify you as an independent student. And what that means is you are not required to submit parental information on the FAFSA. So it's really important that as you're working your way through the FAFSA, there's going to be a set of questions where they want to know a little bit more about some of these things. And they're not asking to be all in your business. I know sometimes students read these questions and they're like, why do they want to know this? Well, they want to know so that they can figure out, are you an independent student? Do not need parental information because you're 100% independent. So that is what an independent student is. A dependent student is a student that does need parent information on the FAFSA. So an important thing to differentiate here is sometimes students think if my parent said, I can't support you financially going through college, then that deems them independent. And that's not the case. So just because your parent can't support you financially in college doesn't make you independent. It would have to be one of the circumstances you're seeing on the screen, or there are occasions where there might be something that's not captured in that list that I just had on the screen. They know that there's a lot of unique student situations. And so there are circumstances or situations where students with special circumstances might be eligible for something called a professional judgment. And this is, something that has to be done at the college or university level. But it requires that student reaching out to the financial aid office. And sometimes that financial aid office may reach out to you directly. So they may reach out directly to the student because they're seeing information in your FAFSA that they want, to verify, or they want to just kind of talk through and make sure is correct. But there are occasions where you might have to reach out and say, this is kind of what I'm going through. It might not have been, captured fully when I completed the FAFSA, but this is what's happening now. So for instance, I've talked to many students in this last year who have gone through changes within the family due to COVID and due to the pandemic. And so being able to talk to that financial aid office to say, this is what, is going on. I talked to a student a few weeks ago who had lost a parent. And so when she's going to complete the FAFSA and doing some of those things, there's going to be information that doesn't quite add up. But I encouraged her to also go to the financial aid office at her school to kind of talk through some of those things that happened. I also worked with a student in the past who shared that there were some things going on within the family, such as a gambling addiction, other things that were really affecting the family. And so for those students, being able to go to the financial aid office at the school they're planning to attend and share a little bit about that experience gives them the opportunity to possibly have their financial aid reevaluated, or to even have their dependency changed. So maybe they were seen as a dependent student initially, but then in having those conversations with the financial aid office about what was going on, they were able to then be deemed an independent student. So again, I would just encourage any student that, might be watching this, that thinks they might be experiencing something that may qualify for a professional judgment. I would just really encourage you to reach out to the financial aid office at that college or university. Because if you don't share it, then they don't know, right? So that's professional judgment. Now, some of you might be wondering, which parent's information do I include on the FAFSA? So remember, if you're a dependent student, you're going to need parent information for the FAFSA. So what I have on your screen is our chart. So on the left, you'll see parents' marital status, and on the right, you'll see the FAFSA action that's required. So for that first line, parents are married to each other. That means you're going to need both parents' information for the FAFSA. So things like income, things like that, you're going to need that from both parents. But on the second line, if your parents are legally separated or divorced, we say use the custodial parent's information. And what we mean by custodial is the parent that you're living with, or the parent that has custody. So feel free, take a look at that, take a picture of it if you need it. But that's just helpful depending on your parents' marital status, what parent information you're going to need for the FAFSA. So federal aid programs, remember how early on in the presentation, I mentioned that the federal government is one source of financial aid. I want to show you some of the different scholarships, grants that are available through the federal government. So I've put some up on your screen. The largest is the first one that is listed, the Pell Grant. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Pell, but we're going to talk a little bit more about Pell in a minute. But that's, like I said, the largest program through the federal government. And then you'll notice too that there's some different grants that are around education or the teaching profession. So anyone that's maybe looking to go into one of those career fields, know that you might be eligible for one of these grants, such as the Teacher Education Assistance for Higher Education or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. So again, if you're looking to go into education, definitely check those out and see if you might be eligible. And then of course, work study sprinkled in there. So I know we talked about work study earlier, but that is one of the federal student aid programs. And then the last two bullet points that I have in the list are loans. So loans that are available through the federal government. So I also want to talk about those and just help you kind of know a little bit of the basics around those loans. Now, it's important to know that federal grant aid does not need to be repaid, but federal loans have to be repaid. So keep that in mind. So Pell, I mentioned we would talk a little bit more about Pell Grant. So of course, to even be considered for Pell, you've got to complete that FAFSA. So just hitting home again, how FAFSA is really the key to any of these scholarship and grant programs out there. But to be eligible for Pell, any families that are making less than $26,000 a year, they will automatically receive a 0 EFC. And what that means is for that college-bound student, they're going to be eligible for the maximum amount of Pell. And this year, the maximum amount of Pell was $6,495. So this can change year to year, but for this year, this is how much students received in Pell. And keep in mind, remember that cost of attendance slide I had up earlier? If you are eligible for Pell, and let's say you're going to the community college, that was a little over what, $12,700 or so for the cost of attendance. If you're eligible for Pell, you've now cut that in half, and that's just one program. So really just trying to show you that you might be eligible for more than one program that can really help reduce that cost of attendance at that college or university. So federal work study, we talked about this earlier. Just remember that they're going to ask you a question on the FAFSA about whether or not you want to be considered for federal work study. And again, I would just encourage you to check that box because you may find out you're eligible, and then you have some part-time employment options to look at on your college campus. And that makes it a lot easier working on the college campus. They know you're a college student, so they're going to work around your class schedule. And remember, you don't have to work 20 hours a week. You could work 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week, whatever works with your schedule, but you're able to take advantage of some of that earned money to help pay for college. So loans, I said that, of course, I had to talk about it. It's not the most exciting topic, but again, very, very important. So there's two main types of federal student loans, and that's subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So the main difference is highlighted in blue on the screen for you. So subsidized loans, that means that the government is going to pay the interest on that loan while you're enrolled in school. This is what you want. If you've got the choice between subsidized and unsubsidized subsidized loans, you want to always go with a subsidized loan first. You want the government to pay for that loan. In an unsubsidized loan situation, the student is going to be responsible for all the interest on that loan, and that will start, students, while you're still enrolled. So believe it or not, you'll take out a loan, and the minute you take out that loan, it starts accumulating interest. So it's going to start growing. And again, in an unsubsidized loan, you're responsible for all of that extra interest. So I always recommend, if you've got either choice in a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan, always go with that subsidized loan first. Remember when I talked about award letters and how you're going to see, different scholarships and grants you're eligible for? When you're looking at your financial aid package, you're going to also see loans that you're eligible for. So your college or university, if you have some unmet need, like maybe you have a balance of $3,000 that couldn't be covered by scholarships or grants, then your college or university may show you some federal loans that you're eligible for. And so you're going to have some choices to make. And so I hope that what'll stick with you is subsidized loan first. If they're going to offer you that, again, let the government pay that interest. The third option is called a Parent Plus loan. So the main difference here is that the loan is in the parent's name. So the parent's the co-signer, the parent's ultimately responsible for that loan. Now, students, if you have this available to you, it's definitely worth exploring. I didn't have it available to me. My mom said, sorry, any loans you take out will be in your name. But if you have it available to you, it's definitely worth exploring with you and your parent. So just some quick factors to consider if you do have to take out a loan. And it's just so important to share some of these with you, because for me, I kind of wish, that some of these things would have been mentioned to me earlier. Now that I'm a little older, I'm looking back at some of the decisions that my friends made, and things are starting to connect for me, like, oh, that's how they did that, because they were utilizing some of the leftover money from loans to do other things, like go on shopping sprees or go, on spring break. So I want to share with you some of the things that are important to consider, because it can be really tempting to take out that loan. So keep in mind, if you do have to take out loans during your time in college, that your monthly loan payments shouldn't exceed or shouldn't be greater than 10% of your monthly take-home pay during your first year after you graduate from college. So another thing or way to kind of look at it too, that's on a little bigger scale, looking at it in terms of your total loan debt, but your total loan debt should not exceed what your projected first year post-graduation annual salary is. So one way to look at this is, I had a friend who knew that when she was going to get her degree, that in her first year after college, she was going to make around $55,000, probably in her first year. But she took out over $80,000 in student loan debt. So that's a lot, right? If you're only making $55,000 in a year, and your student loan debt is over $80,000, that's a big hole to climb out of, right? So just paying attention to what career field you're thinking about going into, what that average salary might be like after you graduate, and keeping that at the forefront of your mind as you're having to make these decisions every year about loans. So again, if you've got that leftover balance that can't be covered by scholarships or grants, you're going to have to make some decisions, every year that you're in college about how you're going to take out loans, how much you're going to take out to cover that unmet need. And I know it's not up here, but I want to mention, only take out what you need. If all you need is $3,000, you have a balance of $3,000, only take out 3,000, because you'll find that the college or university you're at, they may offer you more. They may say, hey, Emily, you're eligible for 6. And it's really tempting to say, I'll take out the full 6 and I'll have an extra 3,000 in my pocket. That's really tempting. But at the end of the day, when you're done with college, that's all money that you're going to owe back. And do you want to owe back money that went towards things like clothes or going out with friends? Just be very smart about the money that you're taking out and only take out what you need. And then lastly, just thinking about for federal loans, you're going to have some forgiveness options. You're going to have some repayment plans. So students, know that you might start getting, if you haven't already, but when you enroll in college, you're going to maybe start getting offers from private loan companies to finance your loans. And what we see is that the federal loan options, so like the federal subsidized or the federal unsubsidized loans, that those tend to have better repayment options. The interest rates tend to be better. And then you also have loan repayment and forgiveness options through those federal loans. So I just want to point out that the last one that we have listed in that box is income-driven loan repayment plans. And for me, when I graduated from college, I was lifeguarding, and it took me a little while to find a job in my career. But after 6 months, the loan companies were calling me and saying, hey, it's time to start paying. And so I was still lifeguarding, but having to pay back my loans monthly. And my loan payment was like over $200 a month. And I said, ooh, like there's no way I can do this. This is one bill. How am I going to pay this while I'm lifeguarding? Well, I found out that because I had federal loans, I was eligible for income-based repayment options. And so I signed up for an income-based repayment plan. I provided a pay stub, and they were able to recalculate my monthly payment based on how much money I was making. So it went from that $200 payment to like $25 a month. So that was much more manageable. That was doable for me. And so I wouldn't have had those options had I not had federal loans. So I mentioned too that the state of Michigan has scholarship and grant programs for students. So we have our Do You Need Money for College publication that lists all our scholarships and grants. And you'll see they can also be found right on our website that we have up on the screen, www.michigan.gov/MI Student Aid, where you'll find information on all of our programs. But I want to show you just some of the eligibility requirements for our state aid programs. So you'll notice for all of them, highlighted in blue again, you got to have a FAFSA. So to be considered for any state aid, you have to complete that FAFSA, and you have to be enrolled at least half time. So students, that means 6 credits. At least 6 credits makes you half time, 12 credits or more makes you full time. But again, all this information is available on our website. And I wanted to show you this because we have this QR code on our screen, and that will take you directly to our Do You Need Money for College flyer that I mentioned earlier, that shows you information breakdowns for each of our state aid programs. Now, do you remember earlier where I mentioned we have 2 state aid programs that have the March 1st FAFSA deadline? That was the Michigan Competitive Scholarship, MCS, and the Michigan Tuition Grant, MTG. So for the Michigan Competitive Scholarship, if you take the SAT and you have a 1,200 or higher, and you demonstrate financial need. So that's the FAFSA piece, getting that 1,200 or higher and then demonstrating need on the FAFSA, then you would be eligible for the MCS scholarship. Now for the Michigan Tuition Grant, that's for any student that's looking to attend one of Michigan's private or independent colleges or universities. So definitely check out the MTG if you're looking at maybe one of those institutions. And the last program that we have listed is the Tuition Incentive Program, or TIP. Now, this is the largest program that we administer here through the state, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I know I kind of jumped the gun. I was already talking about MCS and MTG, and I want to mention too, as you all are completing your FAFSA, if you're eligible for any state aid programs like MCS, MTG, or TIP, pay attention to your college order. And by that, I mean, for us at the state, we're going to always look at what school you listed first on FAFSA. So there's going to be an area where you can list up to 10 colleges and universities. Let's say you listed Central Michigan first, but now you're thinking of Oakland University. No worries. You can always log back into FAFSA and just rearrange those. So push Oakland University to the top of your list, or you can call us at our customer care center number and just let us know you just want to update your college listed. So TIP, I mentioned this is the largest program that we administer through the state. And in order to be eligible, we're looking to see if the student at any time from age 9 all the way to high school graduation, if they were ever receiving Michigan Medicaid coverage for at least 2 years in a 3-year window. So you can imagine there's a lot of students and families that just don't know they're eligible and don't know that this program exists. So if you're wondering if you might be eligible, there's a couple different things you can do or ways to find out. Know that there's no special application required for TIP anymore, but you do have to complete high school or its recognized equivalent prior to turning 20 years old. The nice thing about TIP is you have 4 years from the time you graduate high school to start using it. And then from the time you receive your first TIP payment, you have 10 years until your TIP benefits expire. So you might be wondering, what does TIP do? What does it pay for? So if you're attending one of our Michigan community colleges here in the state, TIP's going to cover the in-district tuition rate plus $250 in mandatory fees. So that's a good chunk of your bill at the community college. If you're attending one of the Michigan independent colleges, know that what we do is we take the average of the community college in district tuition. So this year it was $118 per credit hour plus $250 in mandatory fees. That's what TIP will cover at the independent colleges. And then there are 5 Michigan public universities that are TIP phase 1. And at those schools, TIP's going to cover the lower level resident rate plus $250 in mandatory fees. Now for phase 1, this happens during a student's freshman year and sophomore year in college. So the student has to be enrolled in either an associate degree, so a 2-year degree, or a certificate program to be eligible. And know that if you find a certificate program that's at least 24 credits and at least 30 weeks of instructional time and you're TIP eligible, you can use those phase 1 dollars. Now, TIP phase 2 is a little more clear cut. Phase 2 happens in the junior year and senior year, and think of it as $1,000 of TIP in the student's junior year and $1,000 of TIP in the student's senior year. Now, I know that was a lot of phases and a lot of amounts. So I would just say, if any of you, want to know more about TIP and maybe how TIP looks at a specific school, know that you can always give us a call at our customer care center, and we'll be willing to answer any questions you have. If you want to just find out, am I TIP eligible? One way you can do that is by creating a MySSG student portal account. And I've got the little QR code up in your screen or on the bottom right hand corner of your screen, where that will take you right where you can create a MySSG student portal account. But keep in mind, students, you have to have a social security number, so make sure you have that on hand, and either a TIP record or a current year FAFSA. And if you're TIP eligible, you're going to get a little message that pops up and lets you know about TIP. So what can you do in My SSG if you do create an account? You can complete applications for some of our other programs. You can also, of course, update your contact information. You can update your college. So remember, I mentioned how important college order is for state aid. You can log right into your student portal and update that, and also view things like payment status. So I don't know if you've checked out our website, but I wanted to show it to you all. What I've circled in yellow on your screen is our students and families tab. So there's a lot of really helpful resources there, information, of course, information on all of our state aid programs, but also, social media, links to our information on social media, and like our scholarship search tool. So remember early on, I mentioned I would show you a tool that you could use to look for those private or third-party scholarships. So what I have up on your screen is this is our My Scholarship Search self-service tool, and you'll see you can actually filter by county. So you can filter by your local county and see what scholarships are available in your local community. And I've got the QR code up on your screen too. That'll take you directly to our tool. But again, you can find that all on our website too. So, definitely check it out. You might be surprised at what scholarships are available right within your own community. And then we are on some different social media platforms. And I would just let you know that my colleague handles all our social media, and we put a lot of information up there. So we might put things about scholarships that are becoming available or deadline reminders. Our handle is at MI Student Aid, and we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook. So like I said, we're going to put a lot of important information up there. So if you don't follow us, definitely connect with us on social media, because we always like to keep all of that updated with new information for students. So I know I talked for a very long time, and that was a lot of information to digest in an hour, but I would just say, if you have any questions, feel free to drop anything in the chat, or if you just need time to kind of sit with all of that information, know that you have Miss Curtin. She's got my contact information too. So you've got resources to help and support you as you're making your way through this financial aid journey.
All right, good deal. Thank you so much, Emily. It was a lot of great information. Quick question. So students who are not over 24, but they do have children and their parents are not supporting them, that automatically puts them as independent?
Yeah, so that's one of those kind of qualifiers. And as they make their way through the FAFSA, it's going to ask them some of those questions. So they'll answer yes about if they have any dependents, and they might ask additional questions too about those dependents. And that's a good question, because I wanted to mention too that for any students who might have that independent status, know that college or university might reach out to you to say, hey, we just want to know a little bit more about this. And again, not to be in your business, but they just need to verify on their end and make sure that everything's good, that you didn't maybe accidentally click that, check that box when you shouldn't have. So sometimes students, get what they call pulled for verification. And sometimes students go, oh my gosh, I got pulled for verification. Don't worry, they just want to know a little bit more, and they just want to see, oh yeah, you do have a daughter. Oh, okay, and they just want to verify and kind of cross all those T's.
Good deal, good deal. You guys in the gallery, do you have any questions that you want to quickly type in the chat for Emily? Okay. We got one from Cheryl. No question, just comment. Good information.
Thanks, Cheryl.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Cheryl. Thank you for joining, everybody. We're going to bring this to a close then if there aren't any more questions that you'd like to ask. Great presentation, Emily. Again, phenomenal information. We appreciate all of it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And you guys, everybody have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Tony. Have a good day.
Bye now. And next time we won't get link confused.